What's the argument for why we would be better off with asexual reproduction?
Well, think about something like Daphnia, which is a species that can produce both sexually and asexually. There are many species like this, all the way up through some vertebrates. And if an organism reproduces itself asexually, just sort of makes a copy of itself, think about what it's done is it's reproduced all of its genes. And so from the Richard Dawkins point of view, the selfish gene, those genes all got their way. Those genes all won. They got copied, and genes that are good at getting copied will get copied again in the future, right? So you have more of those. That's how evolution works. Whereas if you reproduce sexually, you get another partner. Now, of course, this invites other questions like, well, why are there only two sexes? And why, in fact, have sexes at all? You could exchange DNA without having sexes, right? Bacteria do it through conjugation. But we'll put that aside for the moment. Say there are two sexes, male and female. They come together. They mix up their genetic material. The offspring has roughly 50% of the genetic material of one parent and 50% of the other. And now you only copied yourself one half. And so you didn't win as much as if you copied yourself entirely. So why would you ever switch to sexual reproduction? It's very inefficient from a genetic fitness point of view. Now you can hypothesize things. The most compelling hypothesis I've heard, to me, is the so-called Red Queen hypothesis, which is from Alice in the Looking Glass, where the Red Queen is running with Alice, and Alice at one point says, "We don't seem to be getting anywhere." And the Red Queen says, "Oh, in this world, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in place." And Alice says, "Oh, in my world, we run and we actually get somewhere." And so the Red Queen hypothesis is the idea that you keep running as fast as you can just to stay steady. Well, what does that mean is, well, as you're living a long time as a human, there are these microbes in you, and they're evolving much more rapidly because they have a much more shorter generation time. And as they evolve, they start to get good at getting past your defenses and your locks. They start developing keys to your locks. And you want to reset the locks. The way you reset the locks is by getting a partner and mixing up your DNA with them. So the idea that it's a way of keeping up with the Joneses, where the Joneses are the bacteria, the microbes in your body.
That's super elegant, right? Because if you think about it, if it was all asexual, we'd have a population of identical people. I mean, we would, for all intents and purposes, it'd be interesting to do the math on what it would look like, but you might only have a few 100,000 gene pools as opposed to
you'd have
billions.
Much less diversity. So from a species point of view, if you believed in group selection, right, then you say, oh, right, it's good for the species. But then the smart evolutionary biologists come along and say, yeah, but that's group selection. It doesn't make sense. Selection occurs at the individual or gene level. You've got to explain how it makes sense for that individual, how it enhances their fitness or their gene's fitness. So you say, oh, okay, well, if only half the genes get reproduced, then it's got to be double the fitness level to break even. And that doesn't seem like it really holds up. So what people have said is, you know what? If you take a handful of things, which I can't explain them all right now, this is Muller's ratchet and there's this and that, and you take all of these things and you put them together, then maybe the math works. But it's very inelegant. It's not one nice little theory. And it's probably the same thing with people and evolution. So there was Neil with the thrifty gene, that is, you need to be selected to get food when you can. There's probably some truth to that. Maybe not everyone who's dying of starvation, but if you're not getting enough food, you may not be big enough to win the battle for mates in a polygynous physical combat mating system. And so that may select for wanting to eat more. You may not be, think of the Frisch hypothesis. You get too thin as a woman, you stop menstruating. So it may be that it's not that you die of starvation, but that your reproductive fitness goes down. On the other hand, the freedom for predation idea that John Speakman puts out is also legitimate. And there are yet others. Gary Beauchamp from Monell Chemical Senses Center has talked about the idea of the safety of food. Is it possible that if you're back in time and you're not eating out of a refrigerator in a modern, safe food supply like we have, we love to insult our food supply. It's probably the safest food supply in history. Every time you eat something, you're exposing yourself potentially to microbes and toxins, not just predators. And if you eat less, you're less exposure. So there's an optimization problem. But as you now have a safer food supply, you can relax that constraint a little bit. You can even think about it socially. If I were in a species where I'm just out on my own, right? If I'm, species that just eats eucalyptus leaves or something and doesn't depend on anything else, then maybe I can eat the last eucalyptus leaf. But if I'm a species that very much depends upon cooperative living, right? If I am so hungry all the time that I'm willing to try to kill you for the last bite of chicken, and you're willing to try to kill me for the last bite of chicken, that's a bad situation, especially for me, because you're a little bigger than me and did more martial arts. So that's not good for fitness. It might be good to have satiety mechanisms just so we can preserve some social order. So after you and I each eat a little chicken, we can actually work together on building tools and engines and steam engines and airplanes and so on.